So maybe let's do a quick revision and we'll move on. So who remembers the title of chapter 2? What chapter are we discussing? Sai Amruta.
Contents of the Gita summarized.
Yes, contents of the Gita summarized. So in this chapter, pretty much it's a summary study of entire Bhagavad Gita. And what did we discuss last time? Does anyone recall what was the theme? So today is part 2. Last time we had part 1. So we divided, if you remember, we divided chapter 2 into 3 parts, right? And yes. So who would like to Sukriti? Sukriti. What was the first part we discussed last Sunday?
Was it that the soul was eternal and the body was temporary, so you shouldn't lament too much?
Yes, so Krishna actually in this chapter gives different reasons to Arjuna why he should fight. And so we divided those reasons into 3 categories, right? So the first category in which Krishna was focusing on in that first category is that, well, Arjuna, you're lamenting, you're worried about the death of your teacher, your grandparents, your kinsmen, but they are actually not the body. You're thinking of them in a bodily conception, but they are actually souls, and soul never dies, soul never has birth, right? And so that's why you should execute your duties, and you should not worry about their death, because there was never a time they did not exist. So yeah, that was the theme, and we're going to continue with the second theme today. But before that, let's see who remembers what's the dimension of the soul that we talked about last time.
I do, Prabhu.
Who is this? Ashwin. Ashwin, go ahead.
This is Rishikesh, Prabhu.
Rishikesh, okay.
So
Yeah.
what was your question again?
The dimension of the soul that is described in Bhagavad Gita that we covered last time.
So what do you mean, like the dimension? Do you mean like the size and all that?
Yes, yeah.
So the dimension of the thing is like the tip of the hair divided by 1,000.
Okay.
10,000, I think.
Yes, 10,000 is the right answer, right? So it says you divide into 100 parts, and then each of those, if you take one of those 100 parts and divide it again into 100 parts, that's essentially 100 multiplied by 100, that's 10,000. So 1/10,000th of the tip of the hair. And according to modern estimations, the scientific estimation, again, it's an estimate, you cannot really measure it's very difficult to measure, but if you use an electron microscope, you can estimate the size of the tip of the hair. And you saw that picture, it's about, what was it, like 1 micron, right? Or 100 microns, I can't remember, what was it. So if you do, essentially, so if you divide it by 10,000, it's like 0.1 micron is the tip of the size of the soul. Okay. I think the size was there in millimeters, and then you divide it by 10,000. Yes, then it becomes in terms of micrometers, if I recall it right. Okay, so anyway, we'll continue with the second theme of our discussion. So the second theme of arguments that Krishna provides to Arjuna to fight is that, well, Arjuna, you're a Kshatriya, you should perform your duty. And if you perform your duty without any other consideration, then it would be beneficial to you in this life and also in your next life, right? Because you have sincerely executed your prescribed duties. And if you do not execute it, then you will get a lot of bad name, you will get a lot of dishonor, that somebody of such a high caliber, society has a lot of expectation, then you gave up on your duties. So that's the theme There are a lot of other, arguments that go within that theme, and that's what we will discuss today. Okay. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, Krishna is saying Arjuna that your duty is to fight as a Kshatriya. And we discussed last time that body can never be body is what is slain, but who dwells in the body can never be slain. So who dwells in the body?
The soul.
The soul. Yeah, the soul dwells in the body, and the soul can never be slain. Therefore, you should just consider your duty as a Kshatriya. So who is a Kshatriya? Who can explain Kshatriya?
You have to fight, and you have to protect like the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so Kshatriya means literally means, we can break down the word Kshatriya into two parts. Ksha means to harm, right? And Tra, the Traya means to deliver, like mantra. What does mantra do? Mantra delivers us from different anxieties of the mind. That which delivers us from the anxiety of the mind, that is mantra. So tra means to deliver, but so in this case, Kshatriya refers to someone who delivers or saves the society from physical harm. Kshaya. And have you heard the one? There is a common name called Akshay.
Yeah.
So Akshay means one who does not diminish or is not, So Kshay means to diminish or to be destroyed, right? So one who protects the civilians or the society from getting destroyed or physically harmed is a Kshatriya. So they're not fighting, as somebody said, right? They're fighting to protect the society, especially the Brahmanas, the women, children, old men, cows, but the entire society in general. So that is the duty of a Kshatriya. So here Krishna is reminding Arjuna that your duty as a Kshatriya is to fight. There is no other better engagement for you. In your fighting, what's the difference between Arjuna's fighting and let's say terrorists? They are also fighting. What's the difference?
Arjuna's fighting for like a cause, like he's fighting like because he has to. Like terrorists are like fighting because they just want to kill. So like the intent for Arjuna is basically to like to protect like people.
Yes, that's right. So he's fighting for the right cause, right? So here religious principles means dharma means right cause. It's not for any whimsical reasons, not for personal aggrandizement, which means personal victory. Sometimes you see, especially in, after Kali Yuga began, the kings, they were not so pious. Of course, during previous ages also you find impious kings. But especially in Kali Yuga, the kings, why did the monarchy end? Does anyone know why did the monarchy end? Like most of you are in middle school, high school. Have you studied like world history, French Revolution, Russian Revolution? I don't know what age they teach you that. Anyone? Or does it sound familiar, or it's all maybe you're not familiar with it? No one? Okay. So if you look at the world history,
I think you learned that in high school.
okay, they teach you in high school. Okay, well, okay, no worries. So, but if you look at the world history, what has happened, all over the world there were kings, right? In India they had kings. England was ruled by the queen, right? And then Russia, France. At some point, these kings they got so much self-interested, they were not doing their duties of taking care of the society, and so people revolted, right? And they revolted, because they were so desperate. Some of them were suffering out of hunger, and but the kings were they were living lavishly. And so people revolted, and many times there were bloody revolts, in the sense that they would a lot of violence, and they would kill the royal members, and they would take over. And then after doing that, they established other forms of governance like communism or democracy, right? Uh, so that's why they if you probably, do you learn in school about democracy at least?
Yeah, little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
So some of the things that you might have learned or heard is, well, democracy is the best form of governance, right? So, well, the our understanding based on scripture is democracy is the best form of governance when you do not have kshatriyas, when you don't have good kings. Because when you have good kings, then they are committed to take care of the people for the entire duration of their rule, which is generally the rule for the life, right? And benevolent kings, they're really kind and they take care of. But if in democracy, what happens is, because you cannot be in power for more than 4 years, you cannot do any good, you cannot do any harm, because again, the president does not have full power. He has to uh, get the approval of the Congress. Anytime you want to make a rule, there is voting, and there's always people who oppose. uh, and then there's too much headache, and they think, oh, I'm going to be here only for 4 years, maybe if we win election one more time, it might be 8 years. And so they are not just thinking for short term. They're not trying to do something that's really. So there are problems with democracy also. Nothing, any system is as good as the people who rule it. So yeah, so Kshatriyas, their job was to protect the society. So now the Kshatriyas, earlier, they were not only ruling. Whenever there is a need to protect the society, they would personally go and fight. Like over here, what did you see? This was Duryodhan sitting in his kingdom? No. What was, and he sent an army to fight? No. He was right out there on the battlefield, right? Yudhishthir, right out there on the battlefield. So it's not like that. Now they have divided. Like the president of America is the commander in chief of the US Army, but he never goes to the battlefield, right? So when the president makes any decisions, he's not putting his own life at stake, right? Might say, okay, send 10,000 soldiers to Afghanistan, or bring them back, or go there, right? But the president himself is not out there. But Kshatriyas are not like that. They are not only in the battlefield, they're right in the front of the army. Not that the army is in the front and they're using the army as a shield and they are behind the army. No, it's not like that, right? They're right in the front, leading, taking the charge. So that means when they are putting their life at stake, right? It's in execution of their duty. So for Kshatriya, that it says either you die in the battlefield or come victorious, right? Running away from the battlefield is a sign of cowardice, right? Like someone is a coward who runs away from the battlefield. So that is not appreciated. And so those who die on the battlefield while executing their duties, they achieve the heavenly kingdom. This is what the scriptures say. So those who die on the battlefield, they are elevated to the heaven. So this heaven is not same as the kingdom of God. It's not Goloka, Vrindavan, or any Vaikuntha, or any other spiritual planets where Krishna eternally resides, or any of his forms resides. And then there is no birth, old age, disease, and death. That is spiritual kingdom. But heavenly kingdom is just still within material world. There is still birth, death, other miseries, but it's a much higher place of enjoyment. Just like on this planet also, you see some countries, their economic, social conditions are very horrible. And then there is a developed world where the standard of living is pretty good, like many of the Western countries, for instance. But the primary problem of birth, old age, disease, death, it's always there, right? Right now there's a pandemic. The pandemic makes no distinction whether you are rich or you are poor, right? Anyone can get affected by coronavirus. So similarly, the heavenly planets, they are much better they are still within this material world, but they they are higher, they are elevated. There's higher opportunity for better standard of living. So those who Kshatriyas, those who die in the battlefield, Krishna is saying, what is there to lose for you? It's a win-win situation. Either you win the battle, then you can rule the kingdom over here, right? And if you die, right, then you'll be elevated to the heavenly planets. And same thing applies for other Kshatriyas. Suppose you defeat the other army and they die, but because they died while executing their duties as a Kshatriya, they are also elevated to the heavenly planets. So there is no reason to lament, right? So that's what Krishna is trying to explain Arjuna. Any questions or comments on this? Okay. So the next argument that Krishna provides is that, well, if you do not execute your duties, you'll be implicated in sin, right? Have you heard the word negligence of duty? Anyone?
Yeah,
Who is this?
Samarth.
Samarthya. Can you explain what is negligence of duty?
So basically, what it means is that like you don't like do your duties. So like let's say like Kshatriya's duty is to fight, and in this case Arjuna was also Kshatriya. So what he's doing is he's neglecting his duty by not fighting. And yeah, so same thing with like a Brahmana, if he doesn't like perform like
Right.
sacrifices and yagnas or like donates monies, that's negligence of his duty.
That's
And
correct.
yeah, and if a Sudra doesn't do service, that's a negligence, that's a negligence of his duty.
Good. That's the right answer. Can anyone else give another example of negligence of duty in the contemporary world? So today's world, of course, the society is not there in terms of varnashram today, right? You don't find like real brahmanas, real kshatriyas. Of course, there are warriors, there's army, real vaishyas and sudras. But in general, similar principle can potentially be applied. Anyone else who is not answered, I'll come to you, Sukriti, but let me see. Let me make sure everyone's participates. Somebody is not answered today. Krishna Chaitanya, you want to try? Can you think of an example in today's world of a profession where a negligence of duty concept could be applied?
For example, if someone's skipping like school when they should be attending and learning so that they can do a job in the real world. If they're skipping school, then they're missing out on their education. So that's negligence of duties.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Sukriti? Ashwin. Let's start with Ashwin. I'll come to you, Sukriti.
I guess most jobs, because if you don't appear for a job, you won't get your work done.
Yeah, you're saying any job, right?
Yeah.
Any job, if you don't do your duties, then you're in trouble. Okay, yeah, that's pretty much right. Sukriti.
Like if a doctor says that he will only like give medicine to his family members and friends and not anybody else that needs help.
Yeah, a doctor who is biased, right? Maybe is holding on coronavirus vaccines earlier when they right now it's not a problem. I mean, they're easily available everywhere, but suppose they're not available, and then the doctor is hoarding it to maybe sell it at a higher price illegally, or just give it to their friends and family. That's negligence of duty. So here, Arjuna, as a Kshatriya, if he neglects his duty, he will be implicated in sin, right? So just like in so many examples that you provided, if you don't do your job, you probably lose it, right? Or sometimes, like in case of doctors or somebody in army, there is even criminal proceedings. There are criminal charges that are filed because of your negligence. There are severe implications. Suppose there's an engineer he's supposed to build a bridge, right? But then he did not. The engineers did not take the due diligence to make sure the design is right, it's built nicely. And if that is found out, and that because of that fault of the engineer, the bridge collapsed and so many people died, there could be criminal charges filed against that engineer, right? So similarly, a Kshatriya, because these duties of a Kshatriya are not whimsical, they are according to the Shastra, according to the scriptures. And if he does not execute his duties, he will be implicated in sin. So that's one concern that Krishna is expressing. But then other thing that he's saying is infamy. What is infamy? Anyone knows? Have you heard the word infamy? What's the root word?
In fame, like fame.
Fame.
So like
Fame.
not having fame.
Okay. Or what's the other potential meaning? Let's see. Devlu.
Losing fame.
Sorry.
Losing fame.
Not exactly. Here, what does the prefix in mean? Let's try. Who was
I think
that?
it means like famous for like some bad thing.
Exactly. Infamous means famous. It's a wrong kind of fame, the fame that you don't want. Can you think of any other word for infamous? Let's try someone who's not answered today. Ananya. What's another word for infamy?
I'm not sure, but I think it means that like it's just that you're not famous for a very good thing.
Yeah, you're famous for wrong reasons, but I'm looking for another word. Synonyms. Anushka.
Like notorious?
Yeah.
Yeah, curious could be one. Okay, anyone else? Let's see. Pranav. Can you think of an example? Another synonym.
I think it's like a bad reputation or something like that.
Yeah, bad reputations. Yes, many words. So here the word that we use is dishonor, right? So dishonor is also another synonym for infamous. So for Kshatriyas, the code of the conduct is, rather die than, be dishonored. That's why when they are on the battlefield, if they are defeated, if they come home defeated, it's like an insult. That are dishonored. So rather than living a life of dishonor, better to die, right? So they're putting their life on the line. So for a respectable person, Krishna says dishonor is worse than death. He says people will always speak of your infamy. You will lose your reputation as a fighter. Arjuna was known as a great fighter. Like he could fight and defeat entire armies. And now, if you run away from the battlefield, people, what they will. What do you think if Arjuna runs away from the battlefield?
They will laugh at him.
They will laugh at him. Yeah.
They will. It's like a dishonor to them, and
What else you think they will? What kind of impression others would have towards Arjuna?
I think they would think like Arjuna's not like a good fighter, and they'll make fun of
Yeah.
him.
They would also say he's scared.
And he's like they'll say he's like a scaredy cat or something.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the Krishna is saying that you are thinking of such high principles that I am so kind. I don't want to kill my kinsmen. I respect my grandfather, my teacher, and out of compassion, I am not fighting. But Krishna is saying, what do you think? Others will understand all these high feelings that Arjuna has for others? What do you think? Would others be in their wildest of dreams? Would they ever think that Arjuna? Oh, you know what? Arjuna left, ran away, did not fight because he was very compassionate towards others. That was the reason he didn't fight. Do you think people would think like that?
People. So
These warriors, especially on the opposite side, right?
yeah, they will. They actually will think that Arjuna is not fighting because he's scared or something.
Yeah, you'll see he's just a coward. He just ran away.
Yeah.
Because He was afraid of fighting. No one's gonna. Krishna is saying no one is going to, think that Krishna was very kind. That's why he did not fight.
No
And then
one like you're helping them. Everyone will think like you're scared of them when you like run away from them.
exactly, yeah. So then he says, well, your enemies will describe you in unkind words. They will scorn on you, and this will be very painful. Right? And here Krishna is saying, for a person, a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. How is that? How is it that dishonor is worse than a death for a respectable person? Who can explain that? How it's you? Somebody is not answering. So,
Prabhuji, can you say the question again?
so the question is here Krishna is saying to Arjuna that for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. How is that? How is it that dishonor is worse than death?
Well, it's kind of like if you have like a really good position that you're known for and that you're proud of, like if you get like dishonored, then I mean I remember that story that Krishna pastime that he got like Rukmi and then he like shaved off like half his mustache and half his head and whatnot and Lord Lord Balaram said that you might as well have just killed him because
Yeah.
he's gonna face a lot of dishonor and shame now.
Yeah, so it's a really good example. The Riya is talking about the instance where Rukmi, who was Krishna's brother-in-law, and Krishna had kidnapped Rukmini at Rukmini's request, and his brother Rukmini's brother was Rukmi. He tried to stop him, and he was about to kill him, but Rukmini said, "Don't kill my brother." And so, what did Krishna do? He said, okay, I won't kill his body, but then he half shaved his mustache and half shaved his head and kind of looking at made a funny caricature out of him, kind of insulted, right? And then in Balram saw it, he says, for a Kshatriya, getting insulted is worse than a death. You might have always as well killed him. Can anyone describe why? I mean, this is the right answer, Ria, by the way. But if I were to put it in words, like if you want to explain someone in just general words, what is it? Okay, somebody said in. So I walk down the road, somebody might insult me, whatever, right? If you look at today's social media, anyone can say anything, right? If you go on the social media, I mean, you're not reading so many political news, but all the leaders, they're always criticized. So every day on the social media, somebody would post things or say bad things about the president, or they might criticize him and they dishonor him, right? But then the president goes on, he does not mind, he does not, in the sense that he says, well, this is my job, I need to do my job, this is what I think is the right thing to do. And there's always be criticism, uh, and people might say rude or unkind things, but then I'll just keep on going, like they it doesn't look like they feel that this is worse than a death. So in that context, it might not everyone would be able to appreciate it. How is it that dishonor is worse than a death? So you have to explain this to someone. How will you explain? Let's try. Someone has not answered. Samyukta. Try answering this.
Can you repeat the question?
So how would you explain someone who is not familiar with Vedic culture that dishonor is worse than death? Like, how would you explain someone that dishonor is worse than death?
I don't know.
That's fine. Anyone else has an idea? If not,
I
it's all right.
think like you can say to them that like imagine like being like dishonored and like being made fun of or just like just getting like laughed at and stuff like forever
Right.
literally. like that's like at least like worse than death, because when you die, like you don't experience that stuff, and like people will forget about you.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched the point slightly. So the death is painful. Nobody wants to die, right? But what happens? I mean, sometimes somebody, in the case of Kshatriyas, they might die instantaneously. They got shot by an arrow, and they feel miserable for a few minutes or whatever, and then right, they leave the body, and the pain is over. In case of dishonor, suppose I am insulted today, I'm gonna feel very bad. But that insult might stay with me all my life. And then every now and then, or in some cases, depending upon how bad the insult was, every day somebody might have that same thought and brooding. This is what this such and such person told me. He insulted me. He or she insulted me by saying these harsh words. And they will remember it for all their life. And so it's like dying every single moment. Death comes only one moment. But the dishonor will stay throughout the life, right? So dishonor in that sense is worse than a death, right? Sometimes, they say that the wounds of a weapon heals in due course of time, but the wounds from the sharp arrows of tongue, they do not heal for an entire lifetime. Does that make sense? Yeah. Do you understand what this saying is? Right? Somebody gets shot by an arrow, the wound will heal. It might be painful for some time, but eventually the wound will heal. But if somebody has been shot not by an actual arrow, but the arrows of words, sharp words, which pierce through the heart, then that is painful for the entire life. So Krishna is saying, Arjuna, this is what will happen. You think you are compassionate and you will go away, you will not fight, but you will have to live with the stigma of being a coward, someone who ran away from the battlefield, somebody who neglected his duties. And then you will have to live with this infamy for the rest of your life, right? So that is what Krishna is saying. So yeah, it's an important lesson. We have to, all of us, we have duties right now as students. Well, your duty is to focus on your studies. Eventually you will, as you grow up as adults, you will have some position in society, you will be working, you have duties towards your family, you will have duties towards the society, towards your employer. So it's very important that those are not neglected at any point in time. So then finally Krishna is saying to Arjuna that, hey, there are only two options. It's a win-win situation. It doesn't even know what win-win situation. Have you heard of that phrase? Win-win situation.
What did you say, Prabhu?
Yeah, like a win-win situation is like where you win on
like
both sides.
It's like both parts of the conversation, like both both people, like all two of the people will win.
Yeah, so maybe there are two options, but both options are good options. So they're alternate options in the sense that either this will happen, either A will happen or B will happen.
Like if you want to be rich or if you want to be smart.
Yeah, so it's a win-win situation, right? So you cannot go wrong. If it's a win-lose situation, then you have to really gauge.
Yeah.
Okay, what are my chances of winning? So here, win-win. What is a win-win situation? We talked about this. Well, Krishna is saying, Arjuna, either if you're killed, you'll attain heavenly planets, or if you conquer the enemy, you will rule the earthly kingdom. So it's a win-win situation. So do your duty. You fight for the sake of fighting. Do not think about happiness, distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. So when you do, your duty is not to gain something, but as a matter of sacrifice. That means that, everyone has duties. These are my duties. And I'm going to do this duty as a service to Krishna. That's a higher understanding. And we're going to talk about that in the next slide a little bit more. Then one is not, that path is more secure, right? It's not dangerous. If somebody does not do their duties, then they are implicated in, their victory and losses are always there. Either victory or defeat, there's always there. But if one is executing the duties while being worried about victory or defeat, right, then they are implicated in the results. What does that mean? It means that if they win, they would be like super happy. I won because of my effort. I won. And if they lose, then they might be miserable, even if they are alive, right? If they are defeated and maybe they don't have to lose their life, but they are still, they might be very morose that, I was not able to win. So you see, there one is really implicated in the results of the action. Just like if I have my own business, I'm the proprietor of my business, I've invested money, right? And I'm giving salaries to the employees. I want to make profit. But if my business fails, if I go bankrupt, that means I made so much loss that I had to probably sell everything. Then it's my personal loss, right? I put everything at stake. I lost everything, and I had great hopes, but it didn't work out. And if I win, suppose my startup company becomes the next Amazon or whatever, it becomes really successful, I make a lot of money, then I feel very proud, or I enjoy the results of my work, and I think, oh, you see, I proved myself. I'm such a big success, right? So there is a great upswing as well as a downside. I could lose or I could win. But the employees who I'm employing, suppose I make losses, not significant losses that I will stop my business, but I made losses. What do you think is going to happen to the employees? Right?
They want to leave because they're not making that much salary, and
And if the company is completely closing, then or if it's making losses over a very long period of time and there's no scope, then yeah, maybe the employees want to
they
leave.
get less motivated, I guess.
Uh, yeah, that could also be part of it. But as far as salary is concerned, what's happening to their salaries? Suppose I make loss.
Their salaries are getting reduced, and they're not
Generally,
making
that
as
doesn't
much
happen.
money.
Generally, does not happen. I mean, they might not get a bonus or something, but
Mm-hmm.
if the company makes loss, the salary is still the same.
Mm-hmm.
The salary does not change. You're not paid less because the company made losses. Similarly, if the company made a lot of profits, maybe you get a good bonus. And your salary, but just because I made the company made $2 billion profit, what do you think is going to happen to the salary of the employees? It will increase at a regular pace. It's nothing to do with, it's not directly related to the profit, right? It's most employees, their salary does not fluctuate a lot based on the profits and losses of the company, right? Now they are still responsible for executing their duties. It's not that they can be negligent. Hey, my salary is not going to be increasing or decreasing whether the company makes profit or loss. I can be negligent. It's not like that. But they don't have to worry so much as the owner of the company. He's putting his own real money and wealth at stake. The owner of the business has to pay the employees regardless of whether the company is making profit or loss, right? So when one is doing something as a duty and one does not consider oneself as a proprietor or the owner, right? So now, the similar example applies to our life. Suppose I am an engineer or I have duties that I have to do. I'm an IT programmer or whatever, right? I have duties towards the company, but then I'm not directly I mean, I don't get the direct fruits. I get indirect fruits of the results. So my path is a little bit safer. It's not as risky as the employer, right? And as long as I'm doing my duties without being worried about success or failure, and whatever results I get, I don't think, oh, I'm the cause of my success. Because especially when you work in a company, there are so many team members. Any project that you deliver, it's always a teamwork, right? So you cannot say, well, I am the cause of the results. There are so many factors. Knowledge is required to do a particular project or whatever. The knowledge is imparted to us by others, right? So there are so many factors which are involved, right? So we don't consider ourselves as a cause, and so because we don't consider ourselves as a cause, especially someone who's a devotee who knows that the ultimate cause is Krishna, right? All the arrangement of Krishna. So what they do is whatever results they get, say they get their salary, a percentage of their salary, they will offer it to Krishna in his service. They might buy different items for offering to Krishna, different dresses, or they might help and serve the devotees. So in this way, they're offering things as a sacrifice. So they are not implicated. This path is not dangerous. Another example is, suppose all of you might know, your parents are earning, they pay taxes. Do you know that? Like, you have to pay government taxes, right? Every year, every salary,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, the taxes are auto detected. So it's a money that their parents are earning, but maybe say 20 to 25% of their earnings is just going to the government. And as long as they are paying the taxes, that income is considered bona fide income. This is valid income, right? But if you don't pay taxes, you know what happens? That's a crime. It's called tax evasion. You are avoiding taxes. And there could be criminal charges filed. There could be penalties, sometimes depending on how severe it is, there could be criminal charges filed also. So similarly, we have our duties, right? And if we do our duties, these duties are not whimsical duties. They're duties which are prescribed by scriptures according to what our social position is, either as a teaching class like Brahmana, an administrative class like Kshatriya, a productive class like merchants or farmers, and the labor class, right? All of them have their duties, and they're doing the duty, and in the course of execution of duty, in the course of executing their duties, they will have some income. And just like we pay taxes, right? When of course, Krishna does not want anything from us in the sense, but when we offer our love, and we are not doing it for our own selves, our primary interest is serving, then we are not implicated in the losses and profit. Just like an income, whether you make a lot of income or very less income, the government does not care. Does the government care? Like, okay, this, he gives equal preference. Somebody making say $50,000 a year, somebody making $500,000 a year. In the eyes of the government, both are equal. And as long as both of them are paying taxes, they are treated equal. Similarly, Krishna, he does not care whether we succeed or fail in our endeavor. But the results, when we are offering out of love to Krishna, then he sees, okay, his primary motivation is not his own personal failure or success, but he's doing it as a matter of duty, and then he is using the results as a service, then one is protected. So that is, that should be the purpose. One should focus. The Bhagavad Gita is a science of devotion. And if people, they are distracted by other motivations for personal profit or loss, instead of serving Krishna, then that is not resolute purpose. Their aim is not fixed. Can anyone give an example of, maybe say what's your main goal, like as a student? Anyone who has not answered so far? Let's see, Navya. As a student, what's the primary focus or goal?
The main goal is like to learn and get like good education.
Good education, get good grades. Okay, Parth, you want to say something?
Get a good job.
To learn, gather knowledge for your future.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Who is this?
Uh,
Yeah, go ahead. Somebody want to say something? Add to it?
Yeah, Prodigy, I think it's like also like a capstone, basically like applying all the knowledge over like all these years that you've learned and then applying it into your life. And like in the Krishna conscious view, it's trying to make your education useful in Krishna consciousness. So like dovetailing it.
Okay. So now in the example as a student, somebody said, your focus is getting good grades. So that is your main goal, right? Like what are the kind of distractions that might come, that might stop you? And you might think these are valid. I mean, you might, if you just look at, I'm calling it distraction, but let's say other things. Let's not call it distraction right now. And when you look at each of those things separately, maybe they are valid things to do, right? If you see, oh, maybe this is something really meaningful to do, but it will keep you, still it will keep you away from your main goal, which is to get good grades. Can anyone think of examples of things which might be, if you look at it independently, then you can say, wow, yeah, this is the right thing to do. This is something that should be pursued, should be done, but that's going to keep you away from your main goal. Are there things like that? Can you think of something, some options? Anyone?
I have one.
Yeah.
It's like friends sometimes, like if you spend too much time with them, or if you like spend too much time trying to like make them feel good and like kind of
Okay.
benefit them, you'll kind of forget about your grades and benefiting yourself, kind of.
Yeah, so that's a good example. You say you have to be social. For we are living in a society, and so we are social, and we might have friends, and you have to attend to them. But if that is done to such a level that it's going to keep you away from your studies, then probably it's not a good thing. Okay. What about, say, there's this favorite, say you like some sport, right? You're really good at soccer or whatever. And maybe it's a good thing, right? You can pursue that. Um, Maybe you go to play state level tournaments or national tournaments. So what do you think? Is it good to pursue? Is it I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just going to see a different perspective.
Prabhuji, can I?
Who is this?
Devlove.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
It's right to pursue, but you shouldn't take time out of your studying for it. Like you should keep two different times to do it. You shouldn't do so much that you forget about your studying.
Exactly. Right. So that's what Krishna is saying in this particular word. He says those who are on this path, he is referring to the path of devotional service to Krishna. They are resolute in purpose. Resolute means they are fixed in the purpose, right? The purpose is devotion to Krishna. That's their aim. But those whose intelligence is irresolute, is many branch. That means if they are not firm in their objective, what will happen is they will put more focus on other things. Right? It's important to maintain family and our body. For that we have to work. But if all our energy, time and money is just energy and time is spent only on simply to keep earning money so that we can live comfortably and keep the body healthy, but we are not using this body for ultimate objective of devotional service to Krishna, then it's a waste. There are many other similar examples. For example, we say, do we live to eat or do we eat to live? Right? It's kind of it's something like that, right? Live to eat means when I'm living, why I'm living so that I can eat. That means my purpose in this life is to just make arrangements simply to make sure my eating needs are met. So that's a very low level of consciousness. Rather, when we say we eat to live, that means we just need something to eat that keeps our body and soul together so that we can live. And with this life, I want to do something meaningful, right? So it's a different perspective. So same thing. We have a lot of other obligations and we should do those obligations. It's not that we should neglect them. But then there is an overarching goal or aim in our life that we should not lose. Ultimate, the aim of life is to perfect this human form of life, which is rare, right? There are so many species, and the soul has to transmigrate through all the species. And in those species, it's not possible to achieve spiritual perfection. But in human life, it is possible. We can ask questions. What is the purpose of life? What happens after death? What is our goal? So we have to find out that and we have to pursue that. And that is basically devotion to Krishna. And why is that? We're going to learn that later in the chapter. I think this is the last slide. I think it's pretty much some of the topics that we discussed. So what happens is the Vedic scriptures, they are vast, right? Vedic scriptures, so many books. Primarily, originally, the scriptures were divided into 4 Vedas. Who knows the 4 Vedas? The names of the 4 Vedas, anyone knows?
Atharva, Yajus,
Samaveda,
Sama, and
Rigveda.
Rigveda, right? So there are 4 Vedas. And then further, these Vedas are divided into further subcategories. And so Vedas are vast and they touch a lot of things about how one should live. It is a lot of different art forms are also part of Vedas, like music, dancing. There are medical sciences there, Ayurveda, right? There's yoga. And then there is different laws of how humans should live, and there are also entire sections of Vedas which focus on doing different kind of sacrifices so as to achieve something, which is basically better birth, more wealth, better education, beauty, better next life, elevating to the heavenly planets. And these descriptions are there in these Vedic scriptures, which will be very attractive. So when you read them, you feel like, wow, okay, this is by doing this is what I can achieve. Now, in the last 100 years, especially, a lot of this is lost, right? With the modern industrial society, has expanded so much that people have given up their culture, and a lot of this is lost. But earlier, people, if you want conveniences, you're not going to go to a mall or have different gadgets to make your life comfortable, right? So people think, oh, there are so many other options today. But ultimately, by performance of these sacrifices, different demigods who are in charge of different domains, like there's a demigod of rain, Indra. Similarly, there are demigods who can provide different benedictions, and people are attracted by it. And so Vedic scriptures do talk about all this. But beyond this, the Vedic scriptures, so this is called Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. There are 4 different aspects. So Dharma means performing religious or scriptural duties, right? That is Dharma. What is Artha? Anyone knows what is Artha? Artha is economic development or the results that we get from the performance of sacrifices. So by doing the sacrifices, the demigod is pleased and he provides different benedictions or different paraphernalia, knowledge, beauty, good birth, education, or even immediate economic. Somehow, people will be able to avail that. But why do you do that? Why do you need that? In order for karma means we have so many desires for enjoyment, and they can be fulfilled by acquiring beauty, wealth, knowledge, money, right? But ultimately, one will get frustrated because the soul is not satisfied by all these things. Just like if you take a fish out of the water and put the fish into a, put it on a, what you call, on the beach, and well, you might think, well, I'm enjoying the beach. It's so nice and sunny. So the fish would also enjoy it, right? But what will happen to the fish out of the water on the beach? You
It
might
will
put
die.
will die, right? You might give a nice blanket and bring some sunscreen lotion and put some music, and the fish has no enjoyment in it. And the fish can only be happy inside water. Similarly, spirit, soul, this material body, which is made up of matter, earth, water, fire, air, ether. The soul is not happy. Soul can never be happy in this situation. The soul can only be happy in spiritual perfection. That is, has to get one has to transcend or go beyond the bindings of matter. So how to do that, how to achieve that spiritual perfection, that is also available in the scriptures, and that is the best way to do that is devotion to Krishna, because the devotional service to Krishna is very pleasing. One does not perform devotional service to just so that one can get moksha, which is liberation. One is able to get out of the trappings of these material elements. One becomes free from birth, old age, disease, and death. That's not the real purpose for which one is trying, but one is naturally attracted to devotional service to Krishna because it's just pleasing. Krishna is all attractive. Krishna just means all attractive. Right? Everything about Krishna is so pleasing. And so devotees are naturally attracted to learn more about him, hear about him, sing his glories, offer nice bhoga offerings to him, and take prasad. Right? So it's pleasing. And the byproduct of that is, well, one is also getting liberated. So this is the higher purpose. So this is just to understand.
Is class done, Prabhu?
Yeah, I'm just concluding it.
Okay.
So the concluding statement is, yeah, there are people who are attracted by other parts of the Vedic scriptures, right? And so Krishna in the next theme is going to talk about this to Arjuna. So he's trying to make the distinction to Arjuna. When I'm, okay, there's one, at one level, you have to do your duties. That's why I'm asking you to fight, right? Because if you don't do your duties, you are implicated in negligence of duties. That is sinful. You will get infamy. So that's one level of understanding. So I'm asking you to do your duties because that's the right thing to do. But beyond that, there's a higher reason why you need to do duty, which is as a devotion to the Supreme Lord, which in case of Arjuna, the Supreme Lord is right in front of him. So we are going to talk about that next time. But he's trying to make that point that devotional service, doing something out of devotion, is much higher principle than doing something as a sense of duty, because you're thinking, oh, even if I win, even if I lose or if I die, I will go to heavenly kingdom. So Krishna is saying, okay, that's one level. That's one level of motivation. I'm saying if you even if you die, you will go to heaven. But that's not the real reason why you should do. There's a higher reason that one should do, just as a devotion, not that you might be elevated to heavenly planets. That's still very it's based on calculation of profit and loss. Devotion is not based on profit and loss, and that's what Krishna is going to talk about in the next phase, which is part 3. That's what we'll discuss next time. Did everyone follow this? So we discussed a little bit more philosophy this time, right? But is everyone following this, or is it confusing? And anytime there is questions,
Yeah, I'm following it.
Okay. Yeah, anytime you don't understand anything, please feel free to stop me and ask questions. Any other final comments, questions? Okay, no questions. We'll conclude today's class. We'll see you all next Sunday. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you
Krishna,
for
Prabhu.